Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Clarity Podcast. My name's Lucy. I'm not in my bedroom. I am in Glastonbury, which has been gorgeous. Just been here for a few days, and I leave tomorrow, but I need to get this up. So, um, I wanted to speak today about something that I witnessed yesterday, actually, which felt like a really profound mirror moment, which all the moments here in Glastonbury feel like that. If you know, you know. Um, so I was sitting in a coffee shop and I was doing a bit of work and just watching the world go by when a father walked in with his two younger children, a boy and a girl. And they sat on the table next to mine. And it just lit up the whole coffee shop. As a parent, I just love hearing children. And this little girl in particular was so bubbly and energetic, the way little girls should be, before the world tells them not to be. um, but as she was speaking, she was talking a little bit loudly, but it was absolutely fine. I was smiling, a few of the other people were smiling, and she was talking about a bird that she saw outside. And her father leaned in and told her to be quiet and to stop shouting and to sit still. And so she did. And she visibly kind of shut down. And then they started speaking about something else. And she lit up again and she joined in the conversation, and he told her to be quiet again and to be a good girl and to sit still. He didn't ever tell the son to do this. And then she wanted to go to the toilet. And so she got up and stepped over my bags that I had in between the tables. And he apologized for her. He said, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and rolled his eyes. And she stopped and looked at him and looked at me with sadness in her eyes. And I said, "Oh my gosh, it's absolutely fine." I said, "It's my fault. I shouldn't have put them there. It's my fault. They were in the way." And she looked back at her dad, and he looked down and carried on, and she continued to go to find where the toilets were, and she realised that they were downstairs. She must have been about 5 or 6. And she stopped again and turned back to her dad and said, "Dad, will you come with me?" And he said, "No, you're fine." And I don't know, it just made me feel really sad for her in that moment, that she'd actually vocalized needing her father in this moment that made her feel a little bit uneasy. And he just shut her down. Um, anyway, she carried on and she learnt to just crack on, as a lot of women do. And while she was away, the father then mocked her multiple times to the son, which not only taught that son that he could speak about people behind their backs and laugh at them, but that he could also mock his sister, and that was okay. And the things that they were mocking her for weren't worthy. Let's just put it that way. He was saying things like, "We're going to be here all day because she's going to take ages to eat that," or "I bet she doesn't like it," or "She's going to moan about the flavour of it." She's not going to like that. It's going to take us ages to get home. Anyway, she came back and continued to tell her to be quiet. And then she accidentally spilled a tiny little bit of her drink. And unfortunately, his first reaction wasn't that it was okay. But he said, "Oh, look at your clothes, you're making a mess of yourself. You looked lovely today." Looked, past tense. It's really hard to hear that as a woman and as a mum. And I'm not judging him from a place of critique or that he's not doing his best, because I'm sure he is. I'm sure he is absolutely doing his best. But it just made me think about how men haven't been given the knowledge of what a task it is to raise little girls. He wasn't being mean towards her intentionally. In fact, you could argue he was being quite attentive, and you could argue that he was trying to empower her to go down these stairs herself, you know? But in those moments, I realized that I was watching the architecture of spirit being built brick by brick, and we all are, as we see fathers raising girls. It made me think how many of our limiting beliefs as women were gifted to us by the men who loved us most, without them ever realizing the weight of the package. So as a parent of a little girl who's trying to be conscious with parenting, I've studied the psychology of a little girl's mind. And the father figure often represents the girl's first window into how the world perceives her. But what the father figure also does is instill her level of self-esteem. And as much as mums can support this and contribute to it, it lies with the father figure. Her self-esteem will come from how he treats her or acts with her. If the mother is the womb of emotional safety, the father is the bridge to the external world and to how she has to be accepted, or what she has to accept will all come from the father figure. It's not an easy task. When a father repeatedly rewards a girl for being quiet or compliant, or compliments the way she looks, saying she looks pretty, he's inadvertently teaching her that her value is decorative and passive. There's something called the good girl syndrome. And it's a belief that to be loved, we must be invisible or convenient or proper, you know? And then there's something called the adequacy gap, which is when a father focuses on a girl's appearance and says, "You look like a princess," rather than focusing on her capability, like, "You solved that puzzle so fast." She begins to believe that her adequacy is skin deep. And that's why women are so focused on looking good, being a certain type of way. And from a spiritual perspective, every little girl is a manifestation of the divine feminine, which is naturally creative and wild and expressive. So when we tell a girl to shush or to not get dirty, we are essentially asking her to suppress her life force. That's how big of a deal it is. I don't want to scare you into realizing this, but the task is a big one. For the dads listening, you are the first guardian of her soul's confidence. Your job isn't to just protect her from the world, but to protect her spirit from the world's narrow definition of what a woman should be. And this goes for all father figures, by the way. It's not just the biological parent. So any man that is in a little girl's life consistently and plays a role, a father figure role in some capacity, this lies with him as well. So it got me thinking about things that I could suggest to help and tips for the conscious father figure to shift this narrative and to try and do better for the sake of the next generation, you know? So if you're a dad or a mentor, here is how we can pivot from limiting beliefs to liberating beliefs without judgment or criticism. Praise the process, not the product. So instead of saying, "You look so pretty in that dress," try, "I love the confidence you have when you wear that." Shift the focus from how she looks to how she feels. And I do this too. I'm not coming from a place of judgment here, because this is something that I've had to learn as well. So I'm in it with you and trying to catch yourself in that moment when you just want to tell them how gorgeous they are all the time. It's hard. It's really hard. But you'll notice if you have a boy and a girl, something that I've witnessed is that boys get praised for those things. Gosh, you can run so fast in those shoes. Not the shoes look lovely on you. You look so handsome. You know, it's a different thing. So maybe just try to remember that when you catch yourself in the moment. I love the confidence you have when you wear that. How does she feel? How is she acting? How has she changed? Comment on that. The second thing I thought of was to celebrate the noise. When she's being loud or excited, instead of shushing her, say, "I love your energy. Tell me more. Tell me more about that bird." Let her know that her voice is a gift, not a nuisance. And you know what else? If you're worried about how other people are going to be, or what other people are thinking in that moment, in whatever environment you find yourself in, whether it was a coffee shop like yesterday, or whether it's the park or a restaurant, in all honesty, if there's mothers in there, they will get it. If there's parents in there, they will love the sound of children's laughter and they will be happy about it. And hearing what children have to say is one of the most beautiful things that you can hear. But also, if they hear your response is to tell me more about it and love your energy, they're going to be so content in knowing that they're in company with a father who is raising his little girl to be heard, you know? And then we've got something that I call the messy blessing. She gets mud on her clothes, or she spills a drink. See it as a sign of life being lived. We can wash clothes and we can wash children. It's not the end of the world. But how you respond could be so negative in her whole life. It could have such a negative effect. So say, it's okay, clothes can be washed, but I'm glad that you're having fun exploring. That mud on your dress shows me that you had fun today, that you explored. Tell me what you saw. Or if they spill a drink, it's okay. Don't even acknowledge it. Just clean it up and carry on and give her a cuddle. And check the help reflex. That's the fourth thing that I came up with. Sometimes we rush to do things for girls because we view them as fragile. But let her struggle with the lid of a jar, for example. Let her climb the tree. Let her realize that she is adequate and capable on her own. However, if she calls for your help and she needs you in that moment, this is for the fathers, let her know that you're there. Don't shut her down. For example, yesterday, when she was stood at the top of those stairs and she realized that she was going to have to go do something that made her feel uneasy, and she called out for her dad and said, "Can you come with me?" All he needed to do differently in that moment is such a small tweak, a few words and a tiny action that will have impacted her neurological pathways for the future of how she saw the world and how safe she felt. All he needed to do in that moment was stand up, go to the top of the stairs with her, which was probably about 3 feet, and say, "I got you. I'm right here. You can do this on your own. I'll stay here and watch you go down the stairs. You can do this." Or, "I'm right here. Go on." The difference that that makes. What he in fact did was tell her that you can't come to me when you need me because I'll just shut it down and ignore it anyway. But what he could have done was simultaneously been there for her and encouraged her to do something on her own. And she would have known forevermore that she could turn to her dad. And it's so sad because he probably didn't even realize the weight of what he was doing. And that's why I wanted to make this episode today, because if this helps any father realize the impact of everything they say and do, and how tiny little shifts can change so much for them, then we're making the world a better place. And for the women listening who might be reflecting on their own coffee shop moments from 20, 30 years ago, it's okay to release those old scripts. Your father likely did the best that he could with the tools that he had and the knowledge that was around back then, which was nowhere near what we know now. He was just repeating the language society taught him. But you are allowed to be loud, and you are allowed to be messy. You are allowed to be powerful, even if you aren't done up. So, my reflection for the week is to ask yourself if you are a lady. Where am I still playing quiet to be good? And how can I honor my inner child today by being a little more seen? I went out of the house this morning and went to a different coffee shop without any makeup on today because of that sentiment, because of the impact that that moment had on me, on how we can't possibly imagine being accepted unless we present the best version of ourselves. And yeah, there's so much to be said for making yourself feel nice and beautiful, but why does that mean that you're not beautiful without it? Thank you for joining me in this gentle reflection today. dads and father figures, you have such a beautiful opportunity to be the wind in her sails. So keep guiding and keep loving and keep listening. And until next time, stay conscious.